Good morning viewers and welcome to Bucharest, Romania. Today we'll be making a fun day trip by train, and not just on any train. It will be on a train that's nearly 100 years old and that's still in active service today. We'll be going to a town called Curtea de Argeș, which is well known in Romania for its beautiful church, and that church is also the place where the members of the royal Romanian family are buried. It's early in the morning, so let's grab a coffee first, walk to the railway station and catch our train. We'll be starting our trip from Bucharest Gara de Nord, the main railway station of the Romanian capital. To get from Bucharest to Curtea de Argeș, we first have to take a train to Pitești and connect there to another train that will get us to our destination. It's the ride from Pitești to Curtea de Argeș that will be particularly special, as it's on a train that's nearly a century old. However, we first need to get to Pitești, so let's find our train. The morning train from Bucharest to Pitești is an old-fashioned locomotive-hauled train. I'm in seat 62 of coach 4, which happens to be the rear coach of this train, so let's climb on board and find my assigned seat. This train has second-class coaches only, but it's all very comfortable and most seats have access to a power socket. And we're off! This train takes 2 hours and 4 minutes to complete its 108 km route between Bucharest and Pitești. That means an average speed of just 52 kilometers, that's 33 miles per hour. Such a low average speed is unfortunately quite common across Romania, and although the railway infrastructure on this line isn't great, it's by no means the worst in the country. This morning train from Bucharest to Pitești is categorized as a regional express train, and your ticket will automatically include a reserved seat. At the end of this video, I'll show a detailed overview of the costs of this trip and where you can book tickets. The ride from Bucharest to Pitești across the Wallachian Plain isn't the most exciting, although the scenery gets a bit more diverse closer to Pitești as rolling hills start to appear. After a pleasant journey, I arrived at the station of Pitești with 23 minutes to make my connection. It's an easy cross-platform connection, and after a brief wait, my next train rolled into the station from the nearby depot. The train that will take me from Pitești to Curtea de Argeș isn't just any train, it's a Malaxa railcar. This railcar is officially known as a Malaxa S900, although CFR, the Romanian Railways, categorize it as a Class 77. Enough of the nerdy train stuff. What really matters is that this type of railcar was first built in 1935, with the last one leaving the Malaxa factory in Romania in 1942. That means this Malaxa railcar is almost a century old, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's still in everyday service by the time it turns 100. So let's take a look on board this Malaxa railcar. Unfortunately, it's been defaced with ugly graffiti. As you would expect from a century-old railcar, there is no level boarding, and you have to manually turn the handle to open the door before climbing up a few steps to get inside. Although the interior, especially the seats, is newer than the nearly century-old railcar itself, it remains quite basic and clearly shows its age. It's easy to see that this Malaxa railcar shows a lot of wear and tear, and that's putting it rather mildly. Some of the plastic seats are loose or broken, bits of the walls and the ceiling are coming off. This train really is not in a good shape. And our Malaxa railcar has departed Pitești for the short 38 km journey to Curtea de Argeș. The trip will take 1 hour and 5 minutes to complete, which makes for an even lower average speed than my previous train. Since this service from Pitești to Curtea de Argeș is categorized as a regional train, there are no reserved seats, so you can just take any available seat you like. As there is no air conditioning on a Malaxa railcar, it can get really hot inside, so it's best to avoid sitting on the side where the sun is shining in. The smelly basic toilet with no running water is best avoided as well. The train ride to Curtea de Argeș is quite pleasant, although the constant rattling and noise from this Malaxa railcar on the poor quality railway track do make it hard to truly relax. However, I'm certainly enjoying the ride on this ancient railcar, and it gets even better as the train driver kindly let me stand beside him in the cab, giving us some great views of the track ahead. From the cab, you can clearly see how poorly maintained some sections of the railway line are. At certain points, it feels almost like riding through a tree tunnel, with overgrown branches and foliage occasionally striking our railcar. Although the Malaxa railcar should easily be able to reach speeds of 70 km per hour, the sad reality is that the poor track conditions simply do not allow it. We are now approaching the station of Merișani, a protected historic monument just like the station buildings at Bashkov and Curtea de Argeș along this railway line. See if you can spot all the friendly stray dogs at this railway station, a common sight in rural Romania. It's time again to wave the sweet doggies goodbye and travel on. Another common feature on any secondary railway line in Romania is the constant honking when people walk alongside the tracks or when the train approaches a level crossing. It's certainly not a calm and silent ride. Remarkably, this Malaxa railcar is still in excellent mechanical condition. By pure chance, I bumped into the head of the Pitești train depot on this trip, and he told me the engine on this Malaxa railcar has recently been completely overhauled. I also ended up chatting with one of the other passengers during the ride, who said he much preferred this Malaxa railcar over the more modern train that ran before on this line, as it is mechanically more reliable and rarely breaks down. We are now approaching Curtea de Argeș, which will be the final stop of this train. Pitești to Curtea de Argeș isn't the only railway line in Romania where these old Malaxa trains are still in service. Among others, you can also encounter these Malaxa S900 railcars on the railway lines around Piatra Old, as well as on many regional services out of Timișoara. This railcar isn't the only type ever produced by Malaxa, as there's also the S750 railcar and the S1000 diesel multiple unit, both of which are classified by CFR, the Romanian Railways, as Class 78 trains. Here you can see a Malaxa S1000 at the station of Banat on a cold winter day in Transylvania. These train series were built by the Malaxa factory between 1939 and 1954, making them somewhat more modern and stylish than the railcar we've just travelled on. Sadly, they are much rarer on Romania's railway network, as most were withdrawn by CFR after a Malaxa S1000 caught fire and completely burned down while en route between Arad and Oradea in 2023. Your best bet for seeing a CFR Class 78 is currently on the coastal railway line between Constanța and Mangalia, where it still occasionally operates regional services. Anyhow, we are now arriving at the beautiful railway station of Curtea de Argeș, which is currently undergoing restoration. So we are now in Curtea de Argeș. That's certainly a fun ride on this nearly 100-year-old Malaxa railcar. Can't say it's a great ride though. I mean, my earbuds are shattered, my back is broken in at least 6 places. If this would be your everyday commute, you'd complain a lot. Then again, if you just do it once in a while, it's great fun. And now we're here in Curtea de Argeș with about 4 hours to spend around town. So let's see what it has to offer to us.
Curtea de Argeș literally means Court of Argeș, referring to a royal court that was established here on the banks of the river Argeș between the late 13th and early 14th century. It's one of the most historic towns in Wallachia, the region of Romania situated between the Carpathian Mountains and the Danube. Sadly, not much remains of the old princely courts of the Wallachian voivodes, as these rulers were known. In the 16th century, Curtea de Argeș began to decline, as the town of Târgoviște became the new focal point of Wallachia, followed later by Bucharest. Nowadays, Curtea de Argeș has the feel of a provincial backwater, although I don't mean that in a negative way. It's always refreshing to visit a provincial town away from the tourist trail, as you get a much better insight into everyday life in a country than by sticking to the capital city. Curtea de Argeș has one standout site in the city, which I'm now walking to, passing some nondescript blocks of flats and a pleasant park. And this is the main site I was referring to, although you can't really see it with all the scaffolding around it. It's the cathedral of Curtea de Argeș, built in the early 16th century during the reign of Voivod Neagoe Basarab and dedicated to the Dormition of the Mother of God. I visited this Romanian Orthodox cathedral before, so I can show you a picture of what it normally looks like. The church is especially noteworthy for its twisted turrets. Fortunately, we can go inside the cathedral despite all the renovation work, so we can still admire its beauty there. Inside the Cathedral of Curtea de Argeș are the graves of members of Romania's former royal family. On the right as you enter are the graves of King Carol I and his wife, Queen Elizabeth, while on the left you'll find the tombstones of King Ferdinand I and his British wife, Queen Marie. The cathedral sits at the heart of a larger monastery complex, surrounded by beautifully landscaped grounds. Be sure to have a look at the neighboring park as well, where you'll find the Fountain of Manole. The fountain is tied to a local legend about Manole, the master builder who is said to have constructed the church. When Voivod Neagoe Basarab asked to Manole if he could build an even more beautiful church, the craftsman said yes, so the Voivod left him stuck on the roof, being afraid that Manole might otherwise create an even greater masterpiece for someone else. Trapped on the roof, Manole created wooden wings from the shingles and jumped off, but his attempt to fly and land safely failed. At the very spot where Manole is said to have fallen to his death, a spring of clear water suddenly appeared. This legend is not unique to Romania though, as countries such as Greece and Bulgaria have their own version of it.
Well, that was a bit of a disappointment that the church was in scaffolding and we couldn't see its full beauty from the outside. But still, it was nice to see the church from the inside, and it was nice to see the graves of the former Romanian kings and queens. And it's a beautiful day here in Curtea de Argeș. We still have a few more hours until the train goes back to Pitești and Bucharest. So let's explore a bit more of the town and perhaps grab a beer and some lunch as well.
I'm walking back to the city center along Boulevardul Basarabilor, the main street in Curtea de Argeș. This street has a couple of beautiful old villas and stately buildings, but also its share of less impressive communist-era apartment blocks. As you get closer to the city center, there are also quite a few inviting cafes and restaurants. Feeling thirsty and hungry, I headed to a restaurant called Curtea Veche for lunch.
This is more like it. Cheers.
I enjoyed a tasty tokitora, a traditional meat stew served with polenta and grated white cheese, and then had some papanache for dessert, which are fried donuts topped with cream, jam and berries. After the excellent lunch, I wandered a bit more around Curtea de Argeș to walk off some of the calories from all the food. The theme of churches and scaffolding continued, as the Royal Church of St. Nicholas, built in Byzantine style in the mid-14th century under Voivode Basarab I, was also undergoing renovation. The lovely 17th century Church of the Assumption of the Virgin Mary, with its enclosure walls and exterior frescoes, was one of the most delightful discoveries in town. It's always worth taking a short walk away from the main streets, as you never know what you might come across. After a stop at a kiosk to pick up some supplies for a long journey back, I returned to the railway station to catch the train to Pitești.
And we're back at the railway station of Curtea de Argeș. And it seems that the train is not quite here yet. So we'll just have to wait for 10 to 15 minutes more until we can get back to Bucharest.
After a short wait on the platform at the railway station, the Malaxa railcar finally arrived, having completed its afternoon journey from Pitești to Curtea de Argeș. It turns around at the station for its return journey to Pitești. As there are still a few minutes remaining before departure, let's take a close-up look at this nearly 100-year-old Malaxa railcar. I'm back on the train and we are now leaving Curtea de Argeș to begin the return journey to Pitești. I always love how even the smallest stations in Romania have a uniform station chief to give the all clear for our train to depart. As I was tired from the early start and intensive day out, I just dozed off for most of the journey, which wasn't the most comfortable as the sun was shining in brightly, turning the railcar into a sauna. Eventually, the Malaxa railcar approached the city of Pitești, and moments later we rolled into its main railway station, where we had to change trains to catch the next service bound for Bucharest. Here we are again at the station of Pitești. Even though I really enjoyed the ride on this historic Malaxa railcar, I was also glad to get out of it, as it really isn't the most comfortable train. I took one final look at our Malaxa railcar as it drove off empty back to the Pitești depot, and walked to the other side of the platform to await the arrival of my train to Bucharest. Uh-oh, this is not good at all.
Bad news, people. The train from Bucharest to Pitești, which is supposed to do a direct turnaround here and then get back to Bucharest, has a delay of 15 minutes. And of course I'm on that train. So now I have to wait here for about an hour at the station. I mean, these things are the ones that you start to get used to when you travel by train a lot in Romania. 1 hour delay, 2 hour delay is quite common if you travel by train around this country. You just have to live with it.
Finally, after a 15-minute delay, my train to Bucharest arrived. By this point, I just wanted to get home and rest, so I was glad to be finally sitting on the train as we began the journey back to Bucharest. Although I'm not a big fan of these Siemens Desiro diesel multiple unit train sets, at least I managed to get comfortable in my seat as we slowly made our way across the Wallachian plain. At the start, our speed was good and we made steady progress. But then we started to move slower, and even slower, until we suddenly came to a stop near a grain elevator and reversed along the railway line back to a station in some godforsaken town, apparently unable to continue due to a mechanical issue. After a long wait, the driver managed to get the train running again and signaled to the smoking passengers on the platform to board so we could continue our journey. However, it didn't last long, as soon after we were stationary again, with the train driver walking in and out of his cab trying to fix the problem. At this point, I'd really had enough of it. Eventually, we were moving again, but with a huge delay by now and sitting here completely surrounded by no beer, it had turned into a hellish train journey. Although the sunset views over the endless agricultural fields were decent, I wasn't really in the mood to enjoy them. This is probably a good moment to take a look at the cost overview of this trip. For my return train ticket I paid 66 Romanian lei, which is €13.10. The lunch in Curtea de Argeș, including a beer, dessert and coffee, came at 97 lei excluding the tip, which is €19.30. If I add my morning coffee and the supplies for the journey back, this trip had a total cost of 190 Romanian lei, that's €37.80. With dusk already fallen, we eventually pulled into Bucharest's main station 2 hours behind schedule. Bucharest, Gare de Nord. We are back where the trip began, though quite a bit later than expected. Thanks for following along on this trip, and please don't forget to like, comment and subscribe to my channel. Here at Paliparan, the road goes on forever and the journey never ends.